Still in the region, Eswatini citizens are not happy following a voting app that was introduced by King Swati III to use when voting for the next Prime Minister who will lead government in the next 5 years. The online application is said to be favoring the King's candidates. Citizens are also questioning as to how the candidates get to be picked and by who, as many on the list are not members of Parliament. Meanwhile, His Majesty King Swati III summoned Swati to the People's Parliament to appoint the Prime Minister. However, those who attended spoke with one voice that the next Prime Minister should be able to instill discipline, call cabinet ministers to order, and root out corruption. Now, to discuss more on this, Swaziland Liberation Movement. Good morning and thank you for joining me at this time.
Good morning. Good morning, sister. How are you?
Very well, thank you. All right, so we hear this time around that Swati, in Eswatini are allowed by the king to vote for their preferred prime minister candidate through a voting app by the EBC. That's the electoral body conducting elections in Eswatini. How true is that?
Okay, what we have learned since last week, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, you will understand that the king has called on Swati to come to the Catholic Hall, which is at the royal residence, where they are able to speak and voice out whatever discontent or whatever issues they are having in terms of or in relation or on how the country is being run. Now, the king also said that the people will be able to assist him as to who he gets to pick for prime minister. Unfortunately, that thing goes against the wishes of the people, which has been that the people want to have the prime minister being elected by them, either through the unbanning of political parties or through the Yatingunda centers from where they elected the MPs. Now, when we get to the royal crown, we find that there is an app that has been prepared by the electoral board that is actually conducting elections in the country, which is called the Elections and Boundaries Commission. This app, which is downloaded from the internet, lists the names of the people that need to be voted for, or they call it rating, which then maybe will assist the king as to who is the favorite of the people whom he can then appoint as prime minister. Unfortunately, Maswati were hoping that the king would actually either unban political parties or allow the national dialogue that had been agreed with SADC, that there would be a national dialogue wherein the people of Swaziland would sit down and discuss pertaining the political issues which are actually causing strife in the country, and then come up with solutions as to how we're going then to have a prime minister that will be elected by the people. But now the king has come up with an app that says people must rate, people must vote for some candidates. Even those candidates are people whom we do not know as to how they were actually included at being candidates for such a great call, because some of them, actually a large number of them, are not even members of parliament. Yet the constitution of the country says the king can only pick a member of the House of Assembly to become the next prime minister. But now we're being shown men and women who are not even part of the chambers of either the House of Assembly, or people who have been elected by the masses. They are just people who are coming from nowhere, and now they are saying we must rate them. If, of course, we would love to see them.
Okay, Tantazi, now, why do you think there's so much confusion on that? Because it's assumed that when you're about to vote, then citizens should also be duly educated. Was there any form of voter education, and were they made aware of this application before now?
That is the other challenging effect, because you see, we were only introduced to this app, was it Wednesday or or Tuesday, wherein it was said that there is an app wherein you can begin to actually vote through using your phone number to say this is the candidate that you feel maybe has actually contributed much, something that has got some sense, who can then be elected to actually appointed to be prime minister. But now, the ABC is a body that is actually protected by the Constitution, which is actually aimed at conducting elections in the country, which would believe that for whatever election or rating or whatever thing that they do, they need to first actually educate the masses, the people, as to this is how you are going to use this, and this is the purpose of this, so that the people are aware of what they are doing, because we are seeing numbers rising. And there is surely fraud that is taking place in this application, because we do not know who are those people who are actually doing the ratings or the voting in there, and how do they do it, because there's never been any teaching, there's never been any actually formal communication to the people. We've just been seeing numbers rolling up to say this is the one who's being preferred, this is the one, which tells you that all of it is actually surrounded by corruption, surrounded by fraud, and it is surrounded by lies, because the aim of the regime is that at the end of the day, it can be portrayed to the international community that a Maswati participated in the actual nomination or in the appointed of the prime minister and the cabinet, yet they never played such a role. They were just actually being blindfolded and led into a great donga of misery.
All right, so Tazi, has there been any amendments to the Constitution, to allow for this new trend, or is this specifically the decree of His Majesty?
Yes, like I said, that we were hoping that there would be a sitting of the people of Swaziland from all stakeholders relevant to say, let us look at the things that are affecting us, which includes the constitution of the country, which then would allow for the amendment of the constitution to allow that then the people of Swaziland can be able to elect a prime minister. And maybe you find that political parties are unbent so that they can be able to play a role in such a kind of an election. But now, as things stand, the king still has those powers to appoint the prime minister, which are very absolute for him. But he has then come to say, let us involve the public. But the public has not said, because he even said himself when he introduced this thing, to say, you will only advise, but I still hold the privilege or the right to then appoint whosoever I think qualifies to be the prime minister, even if you were to vote for somebody else. So that tells you that we are doing something that is not illegal, which is not protected by a legal framework or any law of the country. The Constitution, as it stands, does not allow the public to participate in the appointment of the prime minister. And that is why we have been calling, and Maswat have been contributing at the Royal Crawl to say, let us elect the prime minister ourselves, so that we are able to blame him when there is crisis in government.
Now, despite all the challenges and also, the questions in need of answers, what are the people saying? Are they excited about the privilege to lend a hand in the election of the next prime minister?
Actually, I can say some of the people of Swaziland are confused now, and many are enraged at this, because many are seeing that this thing is being used as a ploy to actually make the international community, because the SADC, the AU, the EU, the USA were calling for the government to say, allow for a political dialogue wherein you can sit down and address the challenges, wherein even those who are in exile, those who are in prison, there are MPs who are in prison, there is an MP that is in exile, and many other comrades, to say, come back and sit down and discuss, so that you can be able to come up with a framework that will assist to bring about a change that will be accommodating of everyone and everyone's feeling. But the king is trying to run away from that, and is trying to do things Dutch style, to say he wants the world to see like he has done something or have done some reforms. Yet these are not reforms, they are just actually, you see, like he's trying to create an image that something has been done, or that the people have been allowed to play a role in the making of government. Yet much of the cabinet ministers that will be appointed there, and even that prime minister, will be a person who is actually accountable only to the king and not to the masses. Yet the masses have been saying, we want a prime minister who will be accountable to us as the citizens, a prime minister who we can be able to actually call to order even when there is chaos. But now this one who is appointed by the king is only protected by the king and actually works and does things that are only going to suit the monarch. So I can say people are not happy at all.
All right, Tantazi, thank you so much once again for joining us to speak on Eswatini politics.
Thank you very much, sister.